Welcome back to Neon Galactic, a podcast produced by PBS affiliate Key TV in Northern California. I'm your host, James Falk. Thanks for joining us. We said we wanted answers. If you follow this channel, then you may have seen our most recent video, an interview with acclaimed remote viewer and ufologist Birdie Jaworski, as she performed a blind reading on what turned out to be the ongoing appearance of drones and orbs in New Jersey, New York, across the country, and now the world. Our last conversation covered that initial session. It was hugely fascinating and pointed to an unknown and non-human intelligence behind these incursions, as well as a seeming determination on its part to persist and make a change. Various facts from that initial RV session later matched details from pilots off the West Coast, including a red energetic vortex that seemed to play a major role in the manifestations. Now, today, Birdie is back to talk about two new additional RV sessions posted to her YouTube channel just last night that dive even further into the mystery and outline an exotic and spectacular presence on this planet, a sentience that is just now starting to flex its muscles. And there's a lot more than that, so much more, and it's concerning. With that additional information, of course, comes a new slew of questions and, like I said, concerns. The links to all three of these remote viewing sessions are in the description, and I implore everyone to watch. They offer enormous insight into the remote viewing process through the lens of a gifted professional, and they also seem to show our guest today making conscious contact with a non-human sentience that says it is somehow trying to mend a broken connection, something we've apparently done to ourselves. It's a wild ride. Welcome back, Birdie.
Thanks, James. I'm really happy to be on here talking about this with you.
Yeah, thank you for coming and for doing this work. I think it's providing something in the way of answers for what's going on. Now, obviously, this is a part of the story, and we can't, say that this is all going to be exactly as you represent it.
Right.
But I think that there's information here that's very valuable to take forward as we kind of continue to confront all of this. So you put together two new sessions, and watching them was difficult, fascinating, but I mean, you are going through the ringer in these. I mean, emotionally, physically, at times you're pained, your stomach hurts, you weep at one point. It's just it's amazing to watch, and also, I mean, a little bit I was afraid for you. I was like, I hope that she gets a chance to shake this off afterwards. And I hope you take care of yourself, and I'm sure that you are, but that's a concern I had.
This
But
is
we'll
all,
go ahead.
yeah, this is all part of the remote viewing process. When
Yeah.
you have a deep experience in remote viewing, whether you're looking at non-human intelligence or you're looking at, if you're doing a practice session and it's a World War II event or, one of the nuclear blasts, those can affect you super deeply. So
Yeah.
remote viewers kind of expect you have to expect the unexpected and be ready to dive in emotionally.
Well, I mean, that's a good place for me to start with the question, though. I mean, was this a typical session, or is this somehow vastly different than what you would normally encounter because of this sort of emerging NHI?
This was different than most sessions because um, the NHI that I encountered in this was unlike anything I had encountered before. And I've encountered numerous kinds of unusual things out there, but this was a little different and it deeply affected me, to be honest. I was trying to figure out what was happening. This was a session that I actually did over 3 days. I did it in three parts. And so it was really one big session.
Okay.
Broken up into three parts. And so I did the first part that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, I dived back in. I hadn't been told what it was yet, but I wanted to dive in and figure out more about it. And this is how I typically work. Typically takes me a few days to work on a project.
Are you sort of constantly connected during that time, like kind of at least by threads, or do you completely remove yourself and then have to come back into it? Just curious.
Yeah, I pieces will float into my mind during the day, but I'm so
Mhm.
used to doing this like literally 7 days a week. I remote view every single morning in the wee hours. It's just what I do.
Yeah.
And so I'm used to that. And diving back in is really no effort. It's just a decision to dive back in.
Okay, interesting. I think
Yeah.
that says something about the nature of our reality that is going to become more and more important. So there's two, like we said, there's two sessions, and they had two very different complexions. The second one, but the first we're going to talk about today, was really sort of trying to get to know this NHI is what I felt like, and kind of get a sense of what it is and what it's about. And there was a lot there, and I kind of have snippets written down that I kind of want to just talk about. I mean, things that you mentioning, cascading elevators of sentience with different stops was an interesting quote to me, and I think that that kind of plays out a little bit later on as well. But what were you? How does that relate to what this intelligence may be? Do you have any sense? Was that just a flavor that you kind of grasped onto?
Oh, this intelligence is so complex, and it's probably very simplistic, but it's complex to my wee little human brain that I
Yeah,
was having a hard time trying to describe it. I could feel it fully. I could feel it, but to put it into words was so difficult. It had different layers, like an onion, but elevating in some way.
yeah.
And each level was part of the same sentience, but it had a different aspect to it. And it was reaching out to me. It was kept telling me to calm down during the
Yeah.
session because my heart started to race and I was starting to sweat quite a bit. I was feeling uncomfortable, but I wasn't afraid. I felt unsettled in the first one that I did that we already talked about, but I didn't feel unsettled in the same way this time. I was starting to get more of a familiarity with what I was looking at,
Yeah.
and I was extraordinarily curious, but it's a very unusual kind of intelligence, and it doesn't seem to manifest in the physical world the same way that you and I do. I think it can have a physical appearance if it desires, but that's not its resting state.
It sort of goes to show that, I mean, at this moment with the manifestations that are happening, that is a choice it's making for a purpose. But you mentioned that it's in contact with you, or I mean, in the show, in the videos, you actually say you're inside me somehow. Is it aware of you as a particular being now, or was it before?
It was in that moment, and I don't know if it is right now. I don't have the same sensation right now. I
Yeah.
don't feel the same way, but in that moment it was absolutely aware of me. I felt that it was cataloging me, like whatever they're cataloging everything around them, and I felt like I was being measured in some way, and um all my whatever I am was being put into someone's data bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed to want to guide you and seemed sort of concerned that you were getting it. Like, don't, at one point it says, don't think, feel, which you were doing a lot of feeling. So I'm like, go easy on her. But there was, I mean, because it was intense, but they seemed like, I mean, it wasn't any kind of, I mean, malevolent presence in what you were revealing in that moment anyway. And so that was kind of reassuring from someone who's trying to get a motive out of some of this.
Right. Yeah. That wasn't malevolent whatsoever. I wouldn't label it benevolent per se. I
Hmm.
would label it, I would label it kind of chaotic neutral.
Yeah. No,
as the
that's
kids
right.
would as the kids would say. But
Yeah,
but I felt like
yeah.
I
D&D
felt
reference
like,
for the nerds.
yeah, exactly. I felt like it was concerned about us as a species, or us as I think that it saw us and everything on this planet as being part of the same root, the same thing. And it seemed to have a concern and some kind of care involved. And it did tell me to calm down. And I felt that it actually helped me calm down in some level. And it seemed intrigued in some kind of way with me, intrigued that I was reaching out in this way. I think that it felt, I don't know, the felt's the right word. It doesn't seem to have the same thought processes or emotional component that we do, but I felt that it was um, happy or something in some way, that somebody was reaching out to it.
It's
to
interesting you
find
say
our
that it sees us
answers.
all as coming up at the same root. Friends of mine and I have been talking about what role humanity is supposed to play on this planet, and there's been some talk of like, if the planet is a body, then we are part of that body, and we should have sort of an organic function as a kind of organ. And given that our consciousness is our sort of gift, that are we supposed to be the planet's consciousness? And I wonder if that's sort of what they, would like to see. I mean, who knows?
Oh, I love the way you put that. And that kind of matches in a way the feeling that I got from this presence, that that's how it was viewing us, that yeah, that we are literally a part of this planet. We spring forth from this planet, and we're connected absolutely to everything. We create, we destroy. I could kind of see all of this in its consciousness. I was going to say mind, but that's not the right word. It doesn't have a mind like I would categorize my mind or anyone else's mind who's a human being. It was way more expansive and seemed to also have a completely different perspective on the here and now, and on what's unfolding. It seemed to have this larger idea about everything.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
mentioned time, and I have some questions about how it wants or how it was trying to describe time. But I mean, the reset part. So, I mean, it researches and catalogs and preserves, sort of like you mentioned, a safety mechanism. And so I kind of like a backup kind of thing, right? It was what popped in my head. And then there was a reset you mentioned, and then it kind of does the same thing over again. Like it has this, I don't want to say mechanical, but this role of being a recording of what's happening and then kind of following it through the process. And it made me a little bit worried about what the reset might be. But then there's two different things going on, which I guess we'll have to wait for that because the sun part of it later on is an interesting aspect of this as well. Um, I have one quick question of clarification. What does it mean when you say gamma high?
Oh, okay. So when I am doing a session, not all the time, but much of the time, more than half the time, I wear a EEG device. Actually, it's sitting right here on my desk because I always keep right here. I use a Muse. It has
Yeah,
like these little sensors on the back, and it's actually this is a typical consumer EEG device. They're not that expensive, and they're basically built to teach you how to meditate. They provide kind of a biofeedback mechanism
yeah,
so that
yeah.
if your brainwaves show that your mind is racing in some way, it can give you feedback through the app so that you calm down. But I
Hmm.
use the Muse with a third party app that has been designed by somebody not into remote viewing, just another person interested in brainwave research.
Hmm.
And what I do is, and I've been doing this for 10 years as of a couple of weeks ago, actually. And I've been talking about this quite a bit in remote viewing circles, and I'm giving a lecture on it next month. But what I've noticed is when my data directly correlates to what is there at the experience, at the target, then
Hmm.
my brain waves have a certain pattern. It's very identifiable. And this is from 10 years of wearing things like this and similar to this. And I've got a number of these kinds of devices that I use.
Yeah.
And so that when that happens, my gamma brainwaves are the most prominent of my brainwave patterns, because we all have a mix. We all have alpha, beta, theta, delta, gamma. You know,
Yeah.
in any given moment in time, all those kinds of brain waves are present. But when the data has a strong direct correlation, in other words, I am not getting it in terms of metaphor or comparison or symbology, which is all a part of remote viewing. And I've learned how to break those things down. But when it's super direct, and that means it's there,
Yeah.
it's always a gamma thing. And I always make a note of it if I'm wearing my device.
So you
And
can,
because
it'll,
I have an iPad that's like, you can see it, I think, on one of
yeah,
those
yeah, you
videos.
do. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And so you can, it lets you know when that's happening. And so you know that whatever you're on right there is sort of like an actual representation of what the target is.
That's right. That's right. And so that allows me to know, okay, let's go deeper here because we're
Yeah.
right there.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
good bit of science right in the middle of your rather intuitive work there,
Yeah.
which is important. Um, so, okay, I asked you if it was aware of you. Now, one of the most intriguing aspects of the second session, first that we're talking about, is the you start talking about a waveform and music, and saying that this is somehow musical. And then there's this note I gather from the NHI that's basically you can hear it if you listen, and that it's like a heartbeat. And I kind of got this sort of fetal sense, like like if you're in the fetus or whatever. I mean, but how do you break that down? What do you think that was? And are you able to identify what it meant?
I'm not entirely sure, but there are all kinds of interesting frequencies around our planet that affect us in different kinds of ways. There's the Schumann resonance, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so I kind of got the feeling that it's in a way like that. It wasn't that, because I have actually looked at the Schumann resonance and implications and things and other remote viewing work I've done. This is different. And it seems to be emanating this, whatever this is, emanating this in some kind of rhythmic pattern. And it's a way that all of these different objects are connected, the different points that comprise this collective or whatever they are, and they really wanted me to pay attention to it and to describe it, but I had a hard time with that because it was way too mathematical to be able to get anything concrete there. So at some point I want to revisit that and see if
Yeah.
I can find out more, because it was so intriguing. The part about music was super intriguing to me, that it was like their presence was a song in some way, that they were sharing something about themselves through this resonance, through this frequency,
Yeah.
this music. Yeah.
Which is all, I mean, of course, you break that down into vibrations and harmonics and all those sorts of things. So that could be a language for a lot of different important information that,
Right.
that's
And it may
fascinating.
even be at the atomic level, that maybe when they say we can hear it, maybe they mean with instrumentation. I just, I don't know. So much of this is still so intractable and hard to decode, but
Now, on that particular front, do you felt like they were like wanting you to do that rather than it being like you had just viewed it? It's they are actively trying to give you this information or send you something.
yeah, I felt that there was a definite an exchange. They wanted to have an exchange and they tried to impart something. And and I did the best I could with it. And I know it's not nearly good enough and probably messed it all up, but I tried to describe it as best as I could and try to pull out as many threads. But it's tough. It's tough to try to describe something that's fundamentally non-human and
Yeah.
outside of your own experience.
Yeah, you've got no frame of reference to even understand
Right.
what they are talking about or
Yeah.
communicating. Let's see here. Now, so the time question I have written down here. They put it in an interesting way. You drew out the a timeline and you put an arrow, and then you're like, we see time going from left to right or whatever, and they say that we need to look off the page, which is kind of a was a startling statement, but fascinating. What do you think they mean by that? And are they talking about their nature as beings, or is there something we need to realize about time that's relevant for our own purposes, do you think?
I think it was both. They were trying to explain what how they perceive the moment, and how they perceive everything around them compared to how we perceive everything around us, and that we're here in this moment and they're here, but their moment is so much more broad, and so it might encompass decades in an instant, or eons in an instant. It had that kind of a feeling to it, but that's not quite right either. But it was something like that they were trying to get me to see, or I was trying to figure it out. I'm not sure on that part. The music part they were trying to get me to see. This part I was trying to figure out, but I think they were trying to assist, that there was some idea about time being extraordinarily important in what's happening, not in terms of like a timeline and something's going to happen on a particular day, but more that time itself is a fundamental issue and element in whatever's happening here.
And that sort of feeds back into the idea of the cycle that they keep not referring to, but that keeps coming up. That this is, and they say it again later, that this is something that's happened before, and it's happening now, and it will happen again. And we need to be aware of that. I think the implication was sort of for our long-term comfort and survival, because this will, what I read out of what you said, is knock us down again and again until that we are able to understand that this is happening like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. In that moment, I felt like, okay, they've been here before. They've interacted with us before. They're talking about this, that it's like a regular recurrence. Maybe there's something about a timeline involved there where maybe it's regular to match like when the Earth's poles might shift, or there was no pole shift in any of the data
Yeah,
I got. So I
yeah,
don't want anyone to listen to that and say, "Oh my God, the poles are going to shift right now."
yeah, yeah, yeah. People,
I don't know, but
they get their ideas.
yeah, yeah. So, but I felt that there was something just deeply cyclical about their relationship with us, and by mean us, I mean the planet. And I know that a lot of times when people talk about non-human intelligence and visiting, and some of the messages people have received about the concern that perhaps some of these beings have for the planet, um, you know, a lot of people talk about it as if they maybe care about the planet because they live here or use it in some way, and maybe they don't care as much about it. And I don't think that that was the case here. I think that they view us as being the planet, like we're part. It's all one big living thing to them. We are all big
Yes.
one living thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is such an important message right now. I think that people need to hear.
Yeah.
And your work, remote viewing in the past, is sort of off topic, but not at all. Do you sense a sentience with planetary bodies? I mean, I've learned a lot about astrology recently, and they talk about sort of powers and principalities, and there's the idea that different planets may have different conscious energies, and the sun may be conscious in certain ways, even the galaxy and the universe as a whole. What are
I
your
think
thoughts on that?
I think everything has consciousness of some sort or another. Absolutely everything, everything, everything. And yes, and I think that each planet has its own consciousness flavor. Each astronomical body out there, whether it's a star like our own sun or a moon or a galaxy itself, I think each thing, there's layers of consciousness there. Maybe that's the layers they're talking about, come to think of it. I don't know, because we have our own kind of individual consciousness, but yet as a whole, as a human species, there's like a big consciousness there. And then we're on this planet with the consciousness, and
Yeah,
then we're in a solar system, and that has its own consciousness and flavor, and it goes outward and outward.
they're
Maybe that's what
nested.
they were trying to say, something like that. Nesting, yeah, like little
Yeah,
Russian dolls all the
yeah,
way
exactly
down.
right. And
Yeah,
yeah, and the possibility of communication or connection up and down that sort of tree is something that we are disconnected from, even though we're, a step in that ladder, and that is a form of disconnection I think we're suffering from. Whether or not that's the one that they were referring to, I don't know, but
yeah,
um, yeah.
yeah.
So that's pretty much what I had for the second tape, and I was like, "Wow, that was really intense." And then the third just blew my mind. It took off. You started with the pilot of the helicopter. I mean, you a couple of minutes in, you locked onto the pilot, and I was the amount of detail you got about this kid. It sounds like a young guy who was not happy to be there. He was caught in the middle between the people who were commanding him and what he was encountering. He got a message, I guess, and he was told to engage, which I took to mean attack, but I'm not sure that's what you meant. Is that what you were thinking, or can you describe for us what you
Yes.
saw in terms of the event?
Yeah, yeah. So I first, because I wanted a new perspective when I started this part of it, because I had focused so much on the non-human intelligence, and I was remembering, well, there was other stuff here at the beginning with these helicopters and this and that. So I told myself to go for a new perspective. And so that's how I launched in, and I went right for those helicopters, and I wanted to make sure they were helicopters first. Was I right about that? Yeah, they were helicopters. And then I got the pilot in there, the main person in this helicopter, although I think there was another person with him, but I got the one. And he was he was scared. He was scared. And he had eaten a lot of garlic, and I don't know why that was like so strong in my head.
Yeah,
I
that's
was just
amazing.
like, yeah, you get those weird things like that, and who knows why? Maybe garlic's important here. I don't know. But
Yeah.
he was, in there, and he was getting orders from back back at his headquarters, and then he was also getting a message. So he was like he was in the middle with getting these conflicting orders from his superiors, and they were the ones that said to engage, and I'm just guessing what I was picking up was some kind of anti-drone technology, or some kind of a technology that they have in the military, or black ops or whatever, that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
disengage craft of all kind. I don't know, but it was something like that. It wasn't like a engage in terms of get out the big guns. It was press these buttons and see if it takes it down, kind of a thing. But nothing
Okay.
happened. He did that, nothing happened. And he, at the same time, when he's trying to take this thing down, he gets a message, and it really, really scared him. He was not ready for this. He's young, scared. He was really, his heart rate was going, but it was going before, because he had a lot of caffeine and some kind of a stay awake aid or something. He was like, there was some kind of drug. I didn't get the sense like he was a drug addict or anything. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. It was
whatever
some sort
those
of
kind of
soldier
stimulants,
drug. Yeah. Yeah.
soldier drug.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so he was just terrified, and he felt sick. He didn't know what to do about this. He was trying to explain. They told him to shut up. And that, yeah. And then I kind of disconnected from him, and I went to where he was getting his orders from ultimately. And
Which is another fascinating part of the
yeah,
story. Real quick, though, I wanted to point out that Chris Sharp just published yesterday a story in the Daily Mail talking about encounters that had happened over bases in UK, which aligned with what you're saying, basically. I mean, that there was encounters and they were trying to bring it down, and none of the technology would work. And he didn't write about the personal panic of one of the pilots, but I could imagine, what that would have been like, and it seemed spot on to me.
right.
And that's got to be hard as a remote viewer to encounter people in that
Yeah,
situation and sort of vicariously experience those traumas.
right. I mean, these soldiers, they're just young kids. They're little kids. I mean, I'm an old lady, but they're like little kids.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this is like their first adult thing that they're doing in their life. And they have this incredible weight of responsibility. They're told that they're protecting the American people, and they have these very technical jobs, and they go through a lot of training, and they're not ready for something like this. They're just not.
I
They
mean,
don't have the maturity to deal
yeah,
with it, or the life experience to encounter anything of the unknown. So I have a lot of compassion for anyone
for
who's
sure.
dealing with this.
For sure. And even, I mean, just even as a normal
Yeah,
soldier to be in a life and death situation
right.
is, I mean, and that's why I think you see so much trauma coming out of military engagements and such, because these kids aren't ready for that. And that's something we should probably be reflecting on
Exactly.
as a society.
Exactly.
Let the old men fight. If they want to fight, let them fight. They
They're
can
the
take their,
ones sending
I
everybody off.
know.
I know. Let them get out there.
Yeah. And then I noticed, so it was fascinating to me when you drew the shape and you're like, it's five-sided. It had a hole in it, and it came together that you were talking about the Pentagon, and that and the hole, of course, would be the 9/11.
I didn't even realize that's what it was until like a couple days later. It like hit me. Oh, because I was trying to figure what's the hole? What's the hole?
Yeah,
Duh.
but it was so interesting. And then you go into
Yeah.
great detail here, which I think is one of the more telling parts of all of this. Like first off, you trace it back to like the boss man, and at first I thought you were talking about Joe Biden because you're like
No.
taller than normal, gray hair, kind of in charge of everything, and a jokester, you know. And but no, you were talking about some official within the military who was apparently underground when that altercation occurred or whatever, and is directing things. And again, is a person who is doing his duty in his own mind, right?
Right, right. He was a real jokester, and that's funny. It kind of does sound like Joe Biden, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was somebody younger and you know, very militaristic. And this is he. I don't know at what level of the military he was. I don't get the sense he was one of the upper level, like one of the five-star generals kind of a thing.
Yeah,
But he was somebody important, you know, that's making these kinds of decisions where who's going to do what next, and okay, we've got this one here and that one there. He was like kind of barking out orders.
yeah. And
Yeah.
he seemed to be like knowing that this was going on and also knowing that there's sort of a timeline at play, right? I mean, did you get a sense that he is working to prevent something in particular, or was it just like they're being overwhelmed by the numbers of these objects emerging?
Yeah, I think that he was told to handle the situation. That they I think that the big thought there seemed to be that they're hoping it just kind of fizzles out, and let's see if we can contain it. Like containment was kind of like the whole idea. Let's keep a lid on it. I think that came up in there. We got to keep a lid
Yeah,
on this. So there was mainly triage. He was like working in triage here, trying to put a lid on it, trying to stop things from getting out or things from escalating. There was a sense there that they were worried about um, just the regular population and what they might be doing. Like we already, you know, we've heard these stories in the news about people shooting at
yeah,
drones.
yeah, yeah.
And so I think that I think at one point I said that he called the people idiots, but you know, it wasn't like that was like a deep thought. It was just like idiots.
Idiots, don't shoot or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the detail you go into with this guy, and like, for me, it was like gave me a sense of the power of kind of what you're doing. Because, like, I mean, you're like, sometimes he's mustachioed, he likes Trump, and like these um, things were coming at you like so quickly, you know, and you were writing so fast you could barely keep up. And it was just really fascinating to watch. I've overused that word today, but yeah, it was amazing to watch. And it sort of paints this picture of sort of the American government's response. It, I would like to know more, of course. You know, I'm like hearing all of that. I'm like, how is he working on? Is he one of the few people working on it, or is he part of the whole military structure? How much does this awareness go? Because it seems like they were well aware that this could happen, and they weren't caught by surprise by the presence of the NHI. But
Yeah, I don't know from what I was perceiving in that moment, how far out it went. I didn't even think to check on that because it was
of
the
course,
information. Sometimes when it comes super fast, you can't keep up, and your writing and your spelling is all over the place. It's like mine becomes completely atrocious. And some remote viewers who have been watching my videos, they were like, ha ha ha, yeah, we never can spell in this, can we? Yeah, I know you can't. It's just coming so fast. And
that's so interesting. I wonder if that had like a
yeah,
left brain, right brain kind of
that's
disconnect or something.
exactly it. That's exactly it. And so,
Yeah,
but I did get the sense that, you know, that there was a, you know, compartmentalization of some sort, but there are other people like that I was describing. There are people at screens looking at, I don't know because it's not in the data, but I'm just guessing they were looking at where these things were flying
yeah,
around or floating around or whatever. But
yeah.
something
That's a
like that,
logical
perhaps.
connection.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there are people looking at screens, and then he had like I called him his sidekick or his buddy or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, who was another guy who was a really, really, really interesting person and like a super intelligent, like off the charts IQ, and
yeah.
was super concerned about all of this, trying to figure out. He was tasked with figuring out some kind of message that had come in, or
Yeah, they
some
had
kind of
received a message.
transmission picked up, or maybe it's that frequency, the musical frequency maybe they picked that up. I don't know exactly, but they were trying to decode something they felt had a message.
Which was, I mean, probably the biggest bit of information in this, I thought, besides the sun bit, is that there is potentially this message in the government's hands that they are actively trying to decode, and that this gentleman that you viewed, who was sort of the sidekick of the general, let's call him, is tasked with that, and he feels a lot of pressure. The pressure is mounting because all these objects are showing up, and he hasn't figured it out yet.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And
Uh,
he did not feel good about everything. And he also, I just kept getting this whole sense of his like religious convictions. He's a very religious person. Um, and it was like really messing with his head. All of this is messing with his head. He's like his rational mind. I could just see it split down the middle. His rational mind and his scientific mind and his experience in the military mind is like, yeah, this is happening. I just got to deal with this. This is real. But then that part of him that has a deep belief in his spiritual religious practice was really, really wrestling with everything that this represents. I also kind of got the feeling it wasn't just the alien stuff, the NHI, that it was also just the military presence and involvement and all of these things. He's a very conflicted young man.
which is sort of, I mean, kind of what we might be confronting as a society and microcosm, right? Like
Right,
that young man was, or middle-aged 30-year-old guy who's going through
right,
the motions in terms of his on ontology and trying to figure out where to fit it all in, it sounds like. And that's the
right.
profound question that we may all
Exactly.
be
Yeah,
facing.
30 is really young to me. So
Me too. Me too. I mean, I'm almost 50, and I'm like, oh my God. But the beautiful part was like you were, well, he hasn't got the message, but I can do it. And then you jumped into it, which I thought was awesome. And what did you get?
Oh my gosh, it's just this whole idea that we there's something broken here on with us, with our planet, with everything. There's something broken, a connection that's been broken, and they're here to catalog everything, keep a record, transmit some kind of information, but they want to see what happens if we can fix this connection. There wasn't the sense they were going to fix it for us. There was a question or an idea that can we fix it ourselves? And um and I don't know if we can.
Yeah,
But I'm rooting on us. I think we, you know, we're
we
at
have
this
to try.
crossroads. We have to try. We have to try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't help but think I have an intuitive sense that that whole part about like us being part of the Earth's body has something to do with it, you know? Um,
Yeah, I
it's
think so.
interesting by showing themselves, are they, I mean, that's a push, right? I mean, like it's not in the message, I don't think, but I mean, what part do you think that's supposed to play in that? Is that supposed to be an urging or a wake-up call?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they kept saying, watch us. And that even they said that to the helicopter guy, watch us, watch us.
Yeah.
You have to watch us. There was this idea that looking at them or seeing them or just, I don't think literally with your eyes, but knowing that they're there is
Mhm.
part of whatever they're doing for us to know that they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Now, the sun part of it, which is this interesting thing that came up, and you were very sort of explicit about it. The sun, there's something upcoming that's going to be like an ejective kind of thing, and that it's headed our way potentially. Could you explain what you saw and what you think it means?
Yeah. I suspect it's a coronal mass ejection, as it's called, a solar flare that then shoots off, um, you know, electromagnetic radiation, plasma, whatever, that then will hit our magnetosphere. We may see auroras or maybe a Carrington event, where
Our
our
grid may be affected.
electronics, the grid may go down or be affected in some great ways. And it was so interesting because the non-human intelligence was way more interested in whatever that sun thing is than, like, it didn't come up in the military people. it didn't seem to be on their radar, so to speak. But the non-human intelligence was really, really interested in what's happening there. And I'm not sure why. Maybe I also didn't get the sense that something bad was going to happen with that. Maybe they use that for fuel, or maybe they um I don't know, or maybe they're going to save us from one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Well, because
know. It was
there
just
was
there.
that the notion in there's some sort of instructions maybe in the message, right? That may have had something to do with that, or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think so. That the sun is some part of this. It's not a central part, but it's on the periphery. And it's something that maybe we should pay attention to what's happening there. I mean, we can't do anything about it. The sun is the sun. It's way bigger than we are, way more
Yeah.
powerful than anything on our planet. But
Yeah.
and it does go through these cycles. And we have seen solar flares this year. So it wouldn't be surprising if we had a larger one that caused some troubles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. You encountered some other remote viewers, it sounded like, at
I
one point.
did.
You were like military boots in the consciousness kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. And finding remote viewers in sessions that you do is not uncommon. It's not super common, but it's not uncommon. Some of the bigger events that you look at where many students of remote viewing view as part of their training, like some of the nuclear blasts or famous moments in history, you sometimes get a sense that there's other remote viewers there. This is, almost everyone encounters that at some point.
Yeah.
And this was like that, but I knew immediately these were um, probably Department of Defense or contractors, black op contractor remote viewers. These were serious remote viewers. So I just kind of let them be a little bit. Didn't want to engage there myself.
Yeah.
Just
But
kind
it
of
is
sent a
possible to
message. Hey
engage
guys.
in those
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can have a kind of a conversation. They may try to block you from what they're doing or what they're thinking. I don't care. And I don't know if they were, honestly, I don't know what they were there to look at. Were they there looking at the same non human intelligence? Were they there to offer some kind of support for whatever those maneuvers are with the helicopters? And there was also military drones. I also picked up working with the helicopters. So there are some of our drones up there too.
Well, that
Um,
was a big question I had about the
yeah,
drones, orbs, and helicopters.
right.
So there are mimic-like drones that are meant to
Right.
look like human aircraft. Is that correct? And the
Yes.
orbs are NHI. Is that basically how you break it down?
Okay, so we have our military helicopters. Those are our technology, and we have some high-tech drones that are our technology. And then we have this non-human intelligence that that can create a presence for itself in the shape of an orb or any other kind of shape, also in the shape of a weird looking drone or a drone that looks like something that maybe is our technology but is slightly off, kind of has that uncanny valley feeling,
Yeah, yeah.
or everything's not quite right. So it gets, I think it must be pretty tricky for some of these folks who are monitoring the situation from the government side to figure out who's who up there.
Yeah. And the public, I mean, obviously, like
Right,
we've seen
right, yeah,
online, yeah,
yeah,
all
and
these
that, and
pictures.
now, yeah, it's out of control. It's and now it's even gotten more out of control because not only is there this genuine presence out there and people taking real videos and photographs and having real experiences with whatever this is flying overhead, but now we have everyone looking up in the sky along the East Coast, and and I'm sure many are making assumptions that airplane lights and other things are this activity too. So it's, I think, gotten way more complicated because we haven't been getting answers.
Exactly right. And it's in that absence of information that people are just trying to fill in the blanks and calm
Yes.
themselves down, and it becomes this avalanche of conjecture, and you can't blame them. I mean, and
No.
I'm doing it too, so it's obviously
Yeah, we're all obsessed.
we're
We're
all
all drone
obsessed.
obsessed.
Yeah, it's become a thing. One thing I wanted to ask you before we, wrapped it up. What's your level of confidence with this information? People are going to watch this, and I mean, we had a pretty good audience last time, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, "Is she certain this is what is going on, or are you? I mean, where would you put your own faith in what you've seen here?"
Yeah, so my mantra in remote viewing, as anyone who I've ever trained will tell you, is you get what you get. I believe that when we do this, all data is absolutely relevant. I am an outside the box thinker in remote viewing, and I have a different perspective than most. But I have come to believe, just from looking at tens and God knows how many remote viewing sessions of my own and of many other people's work, I've figured out how it works, in terms of when you get data, what it really means and what it can represent. And I have a very high level of confidence that what we're dealing with here is a non-human intelligence that is flying around. It can mimic other craft. I have very high confidence level that our own military, or military adjacent, I'll say, organizations are up in the sky as well, but on a much smaller scale, monitoring the situation and trying to perhaps bring something down just to test things out, have not been successful. And I do believe that Department of Defense over there at the Pentagon, they're heavily involved. So yeah, I'd say I have a very high level of confidence in the data.
Excellent, excellent. I think that
Yeah.
helps people sort of rank this information for themselves. I have pretty good faith in what I'm hearing coming from you. Um, there's something about your affect that I trust implicitly, and the way that you talk about this stuff, it just reads absolutely legitimate. What are you thinking in terms of the future for your own search and for information? I mean, you've got this amount of information now, which is way more than we've seen before from anybody. What do you think are the next big questions, and are you working toward that personally, or do you feel like you need to take a break from the whole subject?
Yeah, well, I have other sessions I have to work on for for people who have requested all kinds of interesting things. So I'm working on that, and I'm also working with all of my new students, and we're getting into the holidays too. So I am what I'm most looking forward to is seeing the ongoing government response to this, which has been actually super fun to watch because they've been making one misstep after another. They've gone to saying, "You're not seeing anything to see." I mean,
Their story
they've hit
changes
a
every 15 minutes.
every 15 minutes. It's been a new story. But now over the past couple of days, we do have senators coming forward and talking about these in terms of UAP instead of drones. Like Senator Gillibrand has come out and she's calling them UAP now. And there's a number of others in that political circle that are talking about this as a legitimate UAP phenomenon that's underway at the moment. So you can see the tide is shifting. I'm not sure where it's going to exactly go, but I'm along for the ride, and I can't wait to find out. And I'm just excited to be on this beautiful planet with all of you out there, and I can't wait to see what we as human beings can do and how we can grow through this experience and learn more about each other, about our world, and about our enormous, glorious universe.
Meant to that. I think that that's a good place to end it. Thank you so much for sharing this with me and with the viewers. And um, I consider you a friend now, so I'll be happy to reach out at some point, and you can reach out with me anytime you need anything. But
Thank you, James. Thank you so much.
beautiful.